All right. Good evening and good night, and welcome to the It's Your Perspective Talk Show. We are back, baby. 2024 is here. Super and I took about a 6-month break, and it's time to push on into 2024. We're live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. AST. We're coming to you live via StreamYard. We're coming to you via Facebook and YouTube. Just search for It's Your Perspective Talk Show podcast. It'll pop right up. We're also coming to you via Twitter as well. Go to we're VI Perspective on Twitter. VI Perspective. Pop in there if Twitter is your thing. I want to give a quick shout out to Class of the 80s. I'm CHS 82. Big up to the whole entire crew. Big up to Soup. He's not here tonight. And as we roll on here, we do have some special guests in the studio tonight, coming to us remotely. This is episode 476. I want to bring these guys in here. The cast and crew of the stage play that just happened here at the CCT, the Caribbean Community Theater, this past weekend. It's called The Meeting. It's a conversation between Malcom X and Martin Luther King Jr. How could I forget that? And so I just wanted to get you guys on. When I heard about the play, I just thought it was interesting because I was born in the '60s, so just hearing those names just always brings some energy back. But you guys introduce yourself real quick. I think one of the cast members is missing, but you guys introduce yourself, your real name and your stage name, please.
Okay. Well, I'll start. My name is Lionel Downer, and I am the director of The Meeting.
Okay.
All right. So my name is Wanson Harris. I played Rashad. Rashad was the bodyguard for Malcom X in the play The Meeting.
Okay.
Good night. My name is Robert Reffell. I played Malcom X in this. I will not be in part 2. So but I was the one who played Malcom X in the production of The Meeting.
Okay. So the only person that's left that is not here is Dr. King.
And Dr. King was played by Justin Smith. So,
okay. Well, we'll shout him out. Hopefully, he's making preparations to get connected in here. But let's talk about the conversation, the meeting, the conversation. So, are you guys actors? This is what you guys do, or this is something that you do on the side?
I start. I started pretty much in theater from high school with a good friend that took me like a mother, Sharon Brown, and that was the only time I actually had any stage performance. I remain on stage doing other things like music wise as a percussionist, and then I returned about 3 years ago. Said let me try. Actually, I went and see a play called Fireflies with Lionel in it, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna give it a try, and so I went and auditioned for a play called The Affections of May. I did that, and then like 3 months later, I got picked up for another play called Flying West, and I always wanted to work with Lionel, and so he gave me the opportunity to do The Meeting under his direction. So yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, I'm an actor.
And what about you, Robert?
Well, I just something I do on the side. It's something that's very interesting to me. Of course, he's These are passion projects. We're not salaried employees, but it's a privilege to work with all of these gentlemen here and everybody at the theater. I fell into it just because I never had attended any of CCT's production. I had been going to local theaters for the past 7 or 8 years in Houston, Kansas City, Missouri, where I lived. And when I moved here and found that there was a theater, I started following them online. And when I saw that there was a play audition, I decided to just, see what I could do, And fortunately, that was last year's The Agitators, which I was in with Lionel. I believe Eileen directed that. And it was Eileen, the director at the theater, the executive director at CCT.
Yes.
And it was a great opportunity for me to learn. I was able to join another production, I believe in May. And it was a very different type of production, but it's something that I very much enjoy. I don't know if I'd call myself an actor. I think that, these gentlemen who've had many more years, I'm just kind of an apprentice.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'm an apprentice in this game right now. So I'd like to learn more about the game. And of course, I love these plays. I mean, these are what attract me, just these subject matters. So that's my background in the theater. I 9 to 5, working at the port. So that's what I do for a living.
Yeah. So Wanson, are you born in the 60s or are you a little younger?
Man, so I was born in the 80s, believe it or not, 81. So I mean, I guess if I look older, it's because I spend a lot of time around from a little boy, a lot of mature guys and
No, well, the reason I was
yeah.
asking was you say you were born in the 80s, but I guess what I'm getting at is, did you hear about Dr. King and Malcolm X? Did you, as you were, you're born in the 80s, and as you're coming up, did your parents talk about it?
Yeah.
About that in school? Wanson?
Yeah, I'm here. You got cut off. Yeah. But I learned about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, of course, from in school. And then I'm the youngest of 6. I'm a twin with a girl, as a matter of fact. So we're the youngest of out of the other 4. And so I had older siblings that were born in the 60s, and just listening to them and just hearing the different views between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I actually had a brother that he was more towards like a Malcolm X type of guy, and so yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Robert? I mean, you in the 80s too, or you from the 60s?
Yeah, I was born in '84. It was I believe I'm the little child on set, probably the youngest person there. And my exposure to Martin Luther King was, of course, we learned about him in school, a very disparate version from what would probably be closer to the real version of him. And Malcolm was interesting. My sister had a whole bunch of books. She had Toni Morrison books in her room. She had all these, me, I'm just a little trifling little brother, right? So I'd go steal her books, the books that were in my sister's room. And if she's watching right now, I'm kind of giving myself out. And one of the books she had in her room was Roots, Alex Haley, Roots. Mm-hmm. And she had the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so she had a lot of good conscious reading for a teenage girl. And I kind of grabbed it. I think I was 15. And that was one of the first books that I ever read just for pleasure, outside of school, outside of church, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so that was my first exposure. And there was really no one in my life. I grew up in a very Christian, very religious background. There's really nobody in my life who kind of held Malcolm X in esteem. Very few. My father did more than he wanted to admit, but he kind of, for the pacifist's sake, he couldn't really openly expound to support. So that's how I had my exposure to Martin. And then, of course, when I moved to Kansas City, I was on a radio program for a couple of years, and I met a lot of older brothers who were there with the MLK riots in '68 in Kansas City. They told me literal buildings that got burned down and where they were at and where they did a school. And they told me about so they gave me a lot more, gave me a deeper introspective of, okay, this is what was happening in America, not just at those two events in 68 and 65, but this is what was happening in America at that time. And I think for a younger person who was born in the 80s, it painted a good picture for me.
Okay. So Lionel, so how does come about? The stage play was written by Jeff Stetson.
Yes.
And he wrote the play, and obviously you're the director, I guess producer. But how did you guys now come together? I mean, how long ago were you guys preparing for this?
Well, we started the rehearsal process back in November, but actually last season, the theater, looks forward to and tries to forecast on productions for the upcoming season. And I'd actually picked up a copy of The Meeting several years ago. I'm originally from Chicago, and when I usually go back to Chicago to visit family, I want to try and check out some live theater while I'm home. And I happened to find a couple of still photos from a production of The Meeting that occurred in Chicago. Photos looked interesting. Dived down a little bit deeper, found out about the play, ordered the play on Amazon, read it, loved it, and had it on my shelf for a couple of years. And then last season, as the theater was identifying shows for this current season, its 39th season, in discussion with Eileen Desjardins, who's the managing producer over at CCT, we thought it would be The Meeting would be a great fit for the time slot in and around Martin Luther King, weekend.
Yes.
For the past, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons, the theater has tried to introduce stage productions in and around the civil rights movement or what have you over that weekend. So we've done things such as The Mountaintop, which is another fictional play about Martin Luther King Jr. It was set at the Lorraine Motel the night before he was assassinated. Another 2-person play. We followed that with Fireflies, which Wanson said he had a chance to view, which again delved into the civil rights movement. And then last year we did The Agitators, where I first met Robert and Justin, who plays Dr. King. We each played versions of Frederick Douglass. Robert played the younger, Justin played middle age, and I played the elder version of Frederick Douglass. It was about Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, their relationship, throughout their lifetime. And so, again, we felt The Meeting was a great fit for this weekend. And when we later on in the season, we'll look to see what other shows we may want to stage for next season. So
okay, good. So now you guys have come together and you decided to do this. I mean, did you guys have to do any research? I mean, did you go back and read several books, or even watch any documentaries or movies about MLK or Malcolm X to get ready to do the production?
Yeah, I'd listened to his speeches. I had read snippets here of the autobiography. I was trying to start it all over again, but I didn't get too far. I listened to quite a bit of his speeches, maybe about 5 or 6 hours, to try to understand. And because we're blessed to have motion pictures, we have video of this man. It helps so much that you could learn how someone moves, how they talk, how they genuflect, how they just approach speaking to people. And something that didn't, the research that was involved was, and I spoke to Lionel about this when we first started working on this project, was that he speaks distinctive in different occasions. So when he's speaking in front of a crowd, he's different. When he's speaking in an interview, he's different. And then when he's having something closer to a private conversation, he speaks different. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to imitate Malcolm X, but we just wanted to capture some of their spirit. And if we could, then we would just be lucky enough to do so. And I'm sure, Justin and Rashad were trying to capture the spirit of their characters as well.
So you three, I mean, how did you, Jeff, Robert, become Malcolm X? I mean, you guys put your names in a hat and then pull out, and then you're Malcolm X.
Exactly. That's the casting process. Put the name in the hat. Whoever draws, you're it, man.
Yeah. And Wanson, I mean, you're the bodyguard. But were you guys casted? Robert, did he contact you and said, I got this role? What about Malcolm X? I mean, was that how that kind of went about?
It actually, they have an annual meeting of the I'd say bigwigs, of some of the committee around the theater, and they like to when they conduct their business there, they have like a little get together where hors d'oeuvres and whatnot are served, and they do small snippets of productions that they might do throughout the year. I'm very new to this. This is my really second year being around the theater, and Lionel invited me to do a reading with him. So we just read a portion of this play, and of course, when he told me about what it was, I was like, "Oh man, sign me up! Like I want to do that." Little did I know that the finished product was going to be. In fact, I hope someone has a recording of that, Lionel, because the finished product of what we did was so different from that little reading that we did at this meeting. And then after that, then he asked me to come back on audition, which was about 2 or 3 weeks later. I came back to audition, and of course, the director made the decision. So yeah.
Okay. And Wanson, I mean, how did you? I mean, did Robert? Robert pick you?
Yeah, I saw the play. I saw the ad went out for audition, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna audition for this play, and something came up, and I actually missed the date, right? So I immediately text Eileen and say, hey, listen, I want to audition. She said, well, the time has passed. So I said, okay. And then she called me back a few days later and said, hey, Lionel, we'd like you to come and read. But you know what's so funny? I looked at the information where it stated it was a 3 cast, 3 actors, Malcolm, his bodyguard, and Martin Luther King. And so I knew I wanted to be the bodyguard. So I just was like, yep, I just want to audition for that specific role as the bodyguard. And so I did a reading with Lionel, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna call you back, and I'm like, dang. And then he called me back and said, hey, come in and do another reading, and I went in, and it was a wrap.
It was a wrap. They hired you right on the spot. So let's jump into this whole thing of the meeting, as the conversation. Talk a little bit about. I'm not even sure that did Malcolm and Dr. King know each other as maybe like young boys coming up, or did they meet as adults on their journey going forward?
Well, historically, the only time that Dr. King and Malcolm X actually met was back in March of 1964. Both men were in Washington, D.C. to attend the debates on the Civil Rights Act. And there's this iconic photo of the two of them in the hallways, Senate hallways, after the debates, where they had a few brief words, shook hands, posed for a couple of pictures, and then that's it. They went their separate ways. So that's the only known time. Now, was there some sort of secret meeting? Who knows? Because I don't think if they did meet at some other time that they would want that publicly broadcast. I mean, you have two of the iconic figures of the civil rights movement, and both were on, watch lists by FBI, CIA, various hate groups, and so had those groups known about another meeting, there there would have been some serious problems. So I can imagine.
Yeah. So is this stage play based on that meeting that you talked about that they met briefly, or is this sort of a modified, adaptation of this whole thing?
Well, it's a fictional meeting, that Jeff Stetson, the playwright, really fleshed out. The setting is in a hotel room in Harlem in February of 1965. Actually, to be more specific, say February 14th of 1965. Okay. And if we know our history, we know that on February 21st, Malcolm X was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom, in front of his family. And Jeff Stetson, weaves in this sort of sense of foreboding. Malcolm, I think, his character has a sense that his time is short, because on the morning that this meeting actually happens, Malcolm X's house has been firebombed, and he mentions this a number of times during the play. And so, and we know historically that actually happened. His house was firebombed, with his family inside. So, unfortunately, they were able to escape, with their lives. So, and Dr. King, there were, attempts on, his life. We know famously, about that attempt by a deranged woman to stab him, and he makes that comment that, the doctors told them that if he had sneezed, he would have died, because the blade came so close to his heart. So
yes. So now let's get it. So what did they talk about in this meeting? Was this several meetings, or they just had one meeting and they sat down for a couple of hours?
Well, it takes place in a hotel in Harlem, and this fictional meeting was just one conversation, basically. It was a conversation that involved, the prelude was myself, Malcolm, talking to Rashad, his bodyguard, and Rashad kind of questioning, why is he doing this? Rashad being someone who is painfully loyal, almost to a fault loyal to Malcolm X. He is there, but he's almost begging him, like, why are we even putting ourselves through this? There's no need to. We got other business to take care of. You just got your house bombed. So the prelude is that, and then it gets into the meat of about 10 minutes or so in is when Martin comes in, and the conversation is just about kind of where the two men are at. And all of this is in the backdrop of, like what Lionel said, of Malcolm knowing that his life is coming to an end. He also hints at Martin, saying, we're both going to give our lives for this thing we call freedom, right? And so he's telling Martin, look, like, if they kill me first or they kill you first, like, this is one of the others going to happen here. So this conversation kind of, they talk about what they're doing, all with the backdrop that their lives could be cut short, and they need to figure a way philosophically to move forward quicker than later.
Okay. So did Dr. King have a bodyguard too, or?
In the production, no, just Malcolm, with his bodyguard, Wanson. So. Okay.
So I mean, the conversation. I mean, so they're together, and they're. It sounds like these guys are very concerned about their lives. There's been some threats and some foul activity happening. And I mean, did they get into anything about the overall status of the country and how they're gonna move, get things better? I should bluntly put, make things better for everybody. I think both of those guys weren't pro black. I think they were just pro everybody. They just wanted peacefulness for everybody. So the conversation, I mean, was a little bit more involved in just sort of, how are we going to fix this? We got a problem, but are we going to fix this?
the conversation, when you say the larger issue of all people, they were dealing with that. They were dealing with the fact that Martin was pulling on his experience as having led several marches, having seen some horrific things that have happened to people, but yet saying, look, we're going to take the Jesus Christ pacifist, nonviolent Gandhi, and we're going to put them together.
Mhm.
And Martin is saying, hey, look, we can't afford to do that, because if we do, we're helping these people destroy us. And so we need to have a more proactive unity as opposed to a passive unity. So they engaged several times in that. And these back and forths were peaked by there were arm wrestlings that occurred throughout the. There were 3 arm wrestling matches that occurred throughout the production, and these were almost like punctuating when they got to a crescendo. They were having a conversation, and the conversation started to build until it got to a point of a heated argument, and then it was resolved with an arm wrestling match, and then whoever won was kind of like back on even. So yeah, that's how it was.
Did they really do that, or is that something you guys just kind of added?
Part of the play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, highly probably fictionalized. We know that Malcolm probably wasn't he since he had been in the streets, he probably would have not played around with physicality. So I would say it was. However, the reason I believe that Jeff put that in the play, Mr. Stetson put that in the play, was that he understood what physicality meant to these two men. They were both struggling. They were both fighting. And at the very end, Martin says a line, says, imagine what we could have done, all this arm wrestling. Imagine if we were just pushing in the same direction. So he was using that, the playwright was using that as an incredible metaphor of how unity on a certain level can actually move people, as opposed to being at odds with each other within the same movement.
Okay. And so, Wanson, as the bodyguard, I mean, were you there listening to this, or were you kind of just outside the door?
Oh yeah, I was outside of the door. I literally got called in because I guess Malcolm and Dr. King had an argument, and I think Dr. Malcolm actually wanted Dr. King to leave his room. So Malcolm called me in to call a cab, and for Dr. King, and I went and called a cab, but apparently they had a longer discussion. So I wasn't part of the argument per se, but my role was in that part was where I was called in to get a cab for Dr. King. I guess after Malcolm and Dr. King had a heated argument, and I came back in to ask Malcolm if he's okay, because we've been waiting for Dr. King outside for his cab, and he never arrived. So Malcolm left me, Rashad, with some good words of wisdom at the end.
Okay.
And if
So
I can, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask. So, now we're in 2024. I mean, does what these two gentlemen were attempting to do? I mean, has it been helpful? Is it working? Do we have a long way to go? What's your thoughts on that?
Wow. That's a weighty question. And it's interesting, Jeff's the playwright, I think one of the most powerful lines or pieces of the dialogue in this play is where Malcolm tells Martin that that he had a dream, he had a vision, that after they're dead and in enough time for the American public to forget everything, that there will be young people that knew nothing about the struggle, that knew nothing about the movement, knew nothing about the sacrifices that people made, to get to advance, the cause of civil rights, in this country. And I think at some point, I think it's very real. I think it's Jeff Stetson was prophetic in saying that I think we have in some cases a generation that may have forgotten about the sacrifices. So another line that really lands with me again, that Malcolm says, he's like, Dr. King, many of the young men that have sat in these sit-ins with you, these same young men go back to their neighborhoods and commit violent acts. And it's the reason why they're doing this is they may participate at these sit-ins peacefully, but they go back to their neighborhood and commit these violent acts because of the rage, because of the rage that they feel. And maybe the reason why we have the young people acting out nowadays is because
there you go.
There we go. Yeah, I think some of the young people, younger generation acts out because of this rage that they feel. So
do we have a Malcolm X Day?
I think there's some parts of the country that may celebrate his birthday. So I think I've seen footage or heard stories about celebration of his birthday, perhaps particularly like in New York City, so in and around Harlem. So there may be schools or what have you that recognize. Robert, what are your thoughts? So
I believe it's May 19th. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's May 19th. When I was in Kansas City, we had some events that we usually planned around that day. I know some other brothers and sisters who got involved, but there's a lot of people who still observe that day. Some people, I believe, call it Black Liberation Day, and there's a movement of Pan-African people who still observe May 19th as that day associated with his birthday.
Okay. So how did it make you feel, Robert, to play this role? I mean, how did you feel?
I was very moved with this role. Now, it hit me about 2 to 3 weeks into rehearsal that Malcolm was assassinated at 39, and I'm 39 years old. And I have two girls and one boy, 3 children. I wasn't blessed to have, five girls, I believe he had, didn't he? 5 or 6 girls. So I was, it really hit me to think, like, if I were in this situation and I was going to lose my children, and I knew that was happening because of my own. Now previously, in a previous lifetime, I was involved in some community organizing, but never to the level of feeling that I was going to lose my life. But when you're involved in certain levels of community organizing, you understand that you're living and that you put your family through a lot of things. You put your family through a lot of, not to use a word nonchalant, but suffering. If you want to be involved in community organizing and community work, you put your family under a lot of scrutiny. You take time away from your family, most importantly, from your children. And so I was very moved to just portray this. And it was funny because I was so excited to portray Malcolm X when I auditioned. And about halfway through rehearsals, I told Kadeen, who is one of our stage managers, I told her, I said, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't feel I even want to play this role anymore because I don't feel this is appropriate to play this role. I felt like this is so sacrilegious. This is like playing Muhammad or something like that. Like you shouldn't play this role. This is a role you should just leave alone. That's how I felt about it. And a couple of times during rehearsals, I was moved to tear up a little bit because the writing was done so well. The direction was incredible. Lionel, he probably doesn't give himself enough credit because I could almost put my hand on the chopping block to think that's what the director wanted this scene to look like. Like I knew when we got direction, that's what the director wanted, and that's what gave the best light to these two characters whenever we got direction from Lionel. So it was a lot. It was a lot to want to play this role, and I probably would think twice about playing another figure like this because you know you have to reflect a lot when you're doing that type of work.
Okay. And Wanson, what about you? I mean, you played the bodyguard. You had an opportunity to sort of, you know.
Yeah, I look at it playing my role as the bodyguard. I look at it in a different and a bigger picture. So, you know, I'm a combat veteran, right? So I serve in what they call Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. So that's like the second year after the invasion of the Iraqi war, where things were just bad. And um it was like during the rehearsals I realized that if maybe places like Iraq, maybe places like Afghanistan, or right now in this present time, Haiti had a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X, things may have been so different from them. And so I look at it that way during rehearsals, like, you know, these two men fought for, believe it or not, for us, and not just only um, uh, black people, but for everyone, um, to just have equal rights and justice. I've been to countries where there's equal rights doesn't exist at all. There's no such thing as equal rights. And so just being in at rehearsals and listening to um the 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 rehearsals, the lines, I was like thinking like, well, you know, if Iraq had a Martin Luther King and a Dr. and a Malcolm X, and Haiti had a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X, Afghanistan had a Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and all these other places had at least these two great men. I certainly believe things may have been real different at where they are right now.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, Robert. So you played the role and it was uplifting. Do you think that you know? I mean, you sound like you were overcome by emotion. Did it make you feel like, you know, you wanted to help more? Maybe I can do more?
No, I purposely removed myself from community organizing. I believe that people of African descent, specifically in America, are in a very pitiful condition, and I don't think that it's a good investment of Black men's time to invest into community organizing at this time. I think it's best to focus on building strong families, to focus on our children, to build strong nucleuses of like-minded individuals. The climate in which Martin Luther King and Malcolm lived, it's we could call it almost a golden age to some degree. There was, when it comes to Black male leadership and behavior as a whole, I think as a whole, Black males in this country, the image that we project is one of decay. And I think that the strong image of these two men, who were very different, by the way. Martin Luther King, his flaws were well known. Malcolm X's flaws were known in his earlier life. I mean, like, these men were flawed men. So no one ever saying these men are divine. But the image that we project to the world at this time as Black men is very disrespectful to their legacy. Now, there's a lot of incredible Black men. The majority, I believe, of Black men in the community are upstanding. I mean, that's how we continue to raise families as there is. But the image has been so tarnished. of their legacy that we, for like Lionel said, the majority of young people don't even know who these men are more than just their names. So me personally, I don't engage anymore in community organizing for that specific purpose. I find like-minded people, and I work with them. But as a whole, trying to sacrifice for people who aren't really maybe willing or ready to do such, I think might be a little bit too much.
Okay, understood. So what about you, Wanson? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, same here. I don't do any community organizing, and the reason for that is these men have set the foundation, right? And the blueprint for us to follow. And it's I think what we should do really is try to follow those blueprint, the blueprint of Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, even the way how in today's world how we're trying to resolve conflict or crimes against black and brown men or black people in general. So in terms of just doing the community organization, no. I do believe that we all should follow that blueprint that that has been proven to be very effective.
And what about you, Lionel? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I as far as community, organization, I haven't been involved in that, but I am, very active in community service. So, I'm I've been a Rotarian, with one of the local Rotary clubs here for almost as long as I lived in St. Croix, for over 20 years. And prior to me moving to St. Croix, from Chicago, I really, forget. Let me check that. I knew a little bit about community service because my mother is actually a minister, and she would go out to visit hospitals and bring my brother along, with her. So we saw examples of service, from her. So that seed was planted, and I think, we live in a small community. We're about the size of a suburb, and there are so many needs, within this community, and we're fortunate that we do have a number of groups that are actively, trying to address those needs. Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, various nonprofits, Women's Coalition, so forth and so on. So, and there are opportunities for all of these organizations to pool their resources, to work together, to support each other. So, community organizing, maybe not so much. Community service, I'm definitely all for, and I encourage others, to find those opportunities. This is where we live. We live on this little 84 square miles. So, and we have the opportunity to change so many things in this community by coming together, working together, supporting each other. So, again, community service above self.
Well, that seems to be like one of the things that, we don't come together. I mean, you got, everybody's on their own little island, or maybe there's two people on an island, but you need more than two. You probably need 10, 12, 15 people to sort of push forward. I mean, why
I would dare say that your statement can be true. I believe that you could be true in saying that we don't come together, but then we also come together when it comes to festival. I mean, we Juve. I mean, Juve is a master. I mean, we can come together when it's time to do certain things in our community, when it's certain events. We have a limited engagement around Emancipation Day. But we can get 20,000 people, well, not 20,000, we can get 10,000 people in Frederiksted to go behind trucks and to shake themselves and to grind up on women. We can do that. So I'm not being pejorative. I'm just simply stating we can. So our question is, why don't we around? So you have to ask the deeper question: why can't we around other things? It's because we don't care about them, and that's not a knock on Black people. It's just a simple fact we just don't care. At this time, collectively, we don't. Individually, there's people who go to sleep bleeding tears. I know people here who essentially have on this island who I've met in the past couple of years who have essentially given their lives to youth and to young people. They've offered themselves up. They've given all of their talents to just these young people, generations of them. But on the whole, unity is a challenge for African people, specifically African Americans, even Afro-Caribbeans, which we're finding here, because at this time our minds are kind of in other places, and other communities seem to be able to do it here, and it's a challenge for us. So we got to look around that. Now, me personally, and I'll just say this and stop. I think it's around family. I think there's a reason why the Arabs, the Jews, the Asians can all seem to do it on this particular rock that we live on, and Black people can't, because they seem to have a different view of family. Now, I might be wrong. I could be really just talking greasy, but my observations have shown that has been a big difference in how our community operates. And at the time Malcolm and Martin were around, we had a different view of family. The out of wedlock birth rate was a lot lower in the Black community. The divorce rate was a lot lower in the Black community. Black women were marrying more. Black men were marrying more. We had a different view of things. So yeah, maybe that could be, but I do feel that we can once again claim it, because heck, we can get thousands of people together to do other things. I'm sure we can get together to make a positive impact.
All right, man. So, in closing here, Lionel, how do you want to? What are your final words?
Well, my final words are this, and thanks again, to you for extending the invitation, to have this conversation about the play, about these two, dynamic, iconic, men, and their legacies. So, I'd say to our community, go back, read the books about the two men. Read the autobiography of Malcolm X, by Alex Haley. That should be required reading, by any student,
Yes.
regardless of race. Read letters, from the Birmingham jail, by Dr. King. Go on to YouTube. People are on social, on media platforms anyway with their smartphones. Go on to YouTube, listen to some of the speeches, not just the "I Have a Dream" speech. Listen to some of Martin Luther King's other speeches, particularly some of his latter speeches where he was trying to take shifting his focus from the civil rights movement to advocating for the rights of the poor. That was the next big march that he was planning to stage in Washington. Was a poor people's march. Before he was slain. So, listen to Malcolm X's speeches. What's the bullet or the ballot? Things of that nature. So there's so much content in and around this man, aside from the standard pitches, if you will. So. Take those opportunities.
What about you, Wanson? Give us your final thoughts on the play, the two great men. And actually, I got a question that comes to mind just here real quick. Who, in today's era, who do you think is the next Malcolm X and Dr. King? I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on some two brothers now that are sort of maybe have the same mindset, trying to work hard to achieve unity?
Yeah, I I really right now don't see um another Malcolm X and another Dr. King is I mean at this point I just don't see that. Like I said, these two men had the blueprint, and so it's there. It's really there. But to answer your first question, I will say um I mean, especially in the Virgin Islands, I remember only hearing about Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King during the month of Black History Month, especially on this island.
Mm.
And to me, right, we should talk more. Um, of course, it's important that we learn our U.S. history, but we need to learn the Virgin Islands history and the
Mm,
Caribbean history.
mm,
Um, from 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 the grade school all the way up to high school. So even if you have to continue repeating it, because repetition makes perfection, right?
yeah.
So
Watson, hold your thought for 1 second. So Justin Smith just popped in. You guys know who he is?
Yeah, I seem to recall that name. Yes.
I know that, Nick. I know that, brother.
What's
yeah,
happening, guys? I
What's
just
up,
left
Justin?
BJJ practice, and then I'm in this other play too now. So
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
just
Justin,
a
you
small
popped in.
part.
Were you a part of this production?
Yeah, I was. I played Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. alongside
Okay.
Malcolm
Okay.
X and Rashad.
Okay. So give us some quick insight here, man. I mean, how did it feel to play him?
I mean, so back in November when Lionel called me up and was like, "Yo, Justin, I need you to audition for this play." I didn't know what part he wanted me to play. I'm thinking like, man, I want to be Malcolm X or no. Then I was really like, man, I want to be the bodyguard. Because I was feeling like that's what I would fit the most. But he wanted me to play Doctor Martin Luther King, and I learned a lot about more of what he stood for than what I've known just from watching clips on TV or whatnot, and I got to understand him and what drove him to be the kind of person he was from being part of this play.
Mm. So what do you think drove him? What do you think motivated him?
I mean, he number one. I mean, he was brought up, in,
Uh-oh, you just lost Justin there.
what he was brought up in the church is exactly what drove him. And in the Bible, it tells you to turn the other cheek. I mean, these are the kind of things that you're taught as a kid. And being a part of this play, I realized actually how really radical that approach was.
Mm,
I mean, you definitely needed both sides of everything. I mean, you needed the militant, Malcolm side, and you needed Martin's side too. I mean, you couldn't have one without the other, or else I don't feel like it would have worked. But being part of the play, I realized actually how radical, Dr. Martin Luther King was. The things he was doing, it is actually it is extremely hard and difficult to do and be the kind of man he was, because I don't think I could have done it.
mm,
I was brought up and and taught, you get hit, you hit back,
mm,
which is like the easy thing to do. It's hard to turn the other cheek and take a higher road. So I had more of an appreciation for that, and saw and understood how hard and difficult it must have been, especially during that time, to really challenge what was going on in the world and what was going on specifically in the U.S. and really specifically in the South, and take all that punishment just to show just how messed up everything was.
Yeah. So when you and Malcom X were having the conversation, did he say anything to you that was sort of surprising, that was striking to you?
What you think? The things that Malcolm was saying, was it striking to
No,
me?
when you guys were having this conversation, did Malcolm say anything to you that you thought was profound, was striking? Maybe he said something that
Well,
didn't make sense.
the things that Malcolm was saying to me, like, in the play, like when we read the script, I mean, these are this is the way I was thinking. This is the way I felt like I probably would have personally approached things. Like there's the dialogue where, Martin is asking Malcolm, don't we want the same things? And Malcolm responds is like, you want to buy a cup of coffee, he wants to sell it, you want to integrate, I want to own the building, you want to like the way Malcolm approached things is the way like that's the way I probably would have leaned more, in if I lived during that era, I probably would have leaned more towards Malcolm's approach. I mean, it's not like he said, I mean, he wasn't necessarily violent, but if you're met with violence, I mean, it's okay to defend yourself.
So you basically what you're saying. So in 2024, their approach then would probably not work now.
I feel like, there's still we've made a lot of progress, but there still is a lot of work to be done. I'm trying to think. It's hard to. We're not facing the exact same kind of threats that we see on TV back in the 50s and 60s. We're not facing the same kind of thing. I mean, we might be, but it might be coming in a different way or a different angle, which then requires a different kind of approach.
It's called social media.
Yes, it's called social media. It's called, the music industry. It's called, what you see in movies and in everything. There's different ways that we can be, attacked. So you gotta fight it in different ways. I mean, you can't necessarily fight it the same way Malcolm did or Martin did, but we're at a place now because of where it started and what they both did.
Okay.
So yeah, we need new leaders that can kind of go follow in the footsteps in a certain degree.
Okay. And I was also asking too, is anybody now that that maybe you like, that are sort of taking the same steps, the same road that Malcolm or Dr. King were taking?
That is a good question. Have you guys already answered that one? Is this for all of us or just for me?
Well, I'm hitting you with the questions because you just popped in.
Oh,
you
okay.
only got like a couple more minutes left.
You're asking, is there anybody now in the day of TikTok and Snapchat and everything else that I would remotely put in that same kind of category where I would follow? I'm going to say no. I don't know of anybody, to be honest. But that doesn't mean they aren't out there. It doesn't mean like they're probably not all over the place, but my focus has been on things that me personally that I'm trying to do here on St. Croix. So it's not like I'm really paying attention so much to a lot of the things that are going on, like, stateside or TikTok side or Snapchat side or Instagram side. I've got things that I'm trying to focus and accomplish here on island that doesn't let me actually have the luxury to kind of go that route, I guess. So I can't think of anybody. I mean, other than obviously, you know, when Barack became president, I mean, that was a huge deal for a lot of us. But other than that, I mean, I can't think of anybody.
Okay, well, fair enough. Fair, just a question. Fair enough. Well, look, man, I want to thank you guys for coming on the It's Your Perspective Talk Show podcast, man. You know, like I said, you know, Malcom X and Dr. King were just someone that, you know, from early on, because I was born in the '60s, and just knowing, you know, a lot of that was happening in that mid '60s. I was born in '64.
Okay.
Well, at least I was very young, but as I got a little older, to understanding, you know, you just say that you just feel like these guys were just really trying to make the place better for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like my dad, I mean, both my parents are from the South. My mom's from Arkansas, my dad's from Mississippi, and they were born in 50 and 49. So they were, you know, 17, 18, 19 years old when, you know, when a lot of this was going on. So they, you know, you don't realize like how close to, you know, that world like I am, until, you know, like I have conversation with my parents. I mean, you know, they grew up in the South when segregation was going on.
Yeah.
So I actually haven't had a chance yet to even talk to them about the play at all. So once I get a copy of the production, I want my parents to see it and then really get their take on it.
Okay. All right, perfect, man. Look, I want to thank you guys for coming on. It's been inspirational. It's been positive. Much success to all of you in your acting endeavors. If you guys will get a Grammy or you know, one of those you know, fancy statues they give you.
Yeah.
At some point.
Abala Coquito. That's what it is.
Right?
That's our
Well, thank you guys for coming on. It's been inspirational, been positive. Hopefully, to anybody that was listening, especially if you're in the 80s moving forward, you know, this would have shed some light on some things and how great these men were, and what they were trying to do and accomplish, and you know, both kind of tragically dying. And, you know, we still find the planet, the Earth, the world still in somewhat of a disarray. We're working on it. You guys are setting the tone to make things better for all of us here. Starting in St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, we get to the USA, then we just spread around the world.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good to go?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
All right,
again.
well, thank you guys very much for tapping in with me tonight. I appreciate it. Much love and much respect. You guys have a great evening, and all our listeners and our followers, you guys have a great evening too. Thank you so much for tapping in tonight.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, David. Happy before, dear.
Good night.